Tasha Green called me at 11:47 on a Thursday night. Can a company block part of your retirement account without explaining why? I sat up and turned on the lamp. Tasha had handled payroll at Carter Cold Storage for 19 years. She knew the difference between a delayed contribution and something dangerous. What exactly do you see? A restriction notice on the employer-funded portion. Mine, Luis's, and at least 12 others. Did you open anything you weren't authorized to access? No, keep it that way. Save every notice and screenshot only your own account. She went quiet. Renee, people are scared. They had reason to be. Carter Cold Storage employed more than 200 people near the port of Tacoma. For many, that account was the only reason their bodies could eventually stop working around forklifts, loading docks, and freezing rooms. I had not entered the company in almost 6 years. By 8 the next morning, I was driving through its gate. The old blue sign was still there, but new cameras followed every car. Temporary placards directed visitors toward a regional lender I didn't recognize. 3 refrigerated trailers sat dark during the busiest part of the morning. Inside, condensation rolled down the overhead pipes. A banner stretched across the break area, building the next 40 years. Donovan stood beneath it with a microphone, smiling as employees ate a catered breakfast. Behind him, a slideshow promised growth, modernization, and partnership. My brother spotted me. Well, look who's here, he said. The city auditor finally remembered where she came from. A few people laughed. Most watched carefully. Donovan hugged me before I could offer my hand. It looked warm from a distance. Up close, it felt like a warning. You should have called, he said. Tasha did. His smile stayed in place, but his eyes changed. Luis Alvarez stood by the coffee with his arms folded. He had supervised the warehouse since our grandfather was alive. 6 years earlier, after I questioned an accounting entry Donovan called harmless, employee bonuses disappeared. By spring, everyone had heard that I caused the damage and walked away. Luis gave me one small nod. Seth came over next. Donovan's 20-year-old son wore a new company polo and looked uncomfortable inside it. Dad says this partnership will stabilize everything. Partnership with whom? He glanced toward Donovan. He'll explain it. I walked toward the old dispatch cabinet. My grandfather's handwritten safety rule was still taped inside the glass. Check the seal. Check the load. Check again. Then I noticed invoices on a cart outside accounting. 3 unfamiliar maintenance companies. 3 polished logos. One invoice described an emergency compressor replacement, yet several refrigeration units nearby were silent or cycling unevenly. I did not touch the papers. Donovan finished by promising that the partnership would protect jobs and expand the company. When employees began clearing their plates, I asked him, is this financing or a sale? His jaw tightened. It's a strategic transaction. So, a sale. You don't work here anymore, Renee. I still own a small interest. A non-voting interest. Marilyn was waiting upstairs in the office that had belonged to my grandfather. My mother looked smaller behind his desk, but her voice carried the same pressure I remembered. Please don't start another fight. I'm asking why employees can't access part of their retirement accounts. Donovan saved this company after you left. I left because nobody would examine the numbers. You left during a crisis. And he made sure everyone believed I caused it. Marilyn looked through the glass wall toward the warehouse. Your brother stayed. That matters. It explained why his version of every conflict became the family's official history. I asked to see the transaction documents. She said Donovan controlled operations and the board materials were confidential. When I reminded her that she held the majority voting shares, she admitted she didn't understand every financial detail. That frightened me more than an argument would have. Donovan caught me near the loading entrance. If you make another accusation you can't prove, he said, Mom will be done with you. I haven't accused you of anything. You came because somebody showed you a benefits notice. I came because workers are afraid. They're afraid because you turn ordinary financing into a crime scene. He stepped closer. You embarrassed this family once. Don't do it again. I drove away without defending myself. My restraint had always looked like coldness to my family. In my work as a municipal procurement auditor, it was how I kept facts separate from anger. Back at my office, I used only public databases. Business registrations. Commercial addresses. Secured financing filings. No company passwords, private records, or favors. The first maintenance vendor had been formed 11 months earlier. The second, 9 months earlier. The third, 8 months earlier. All three began billing Carter Cold Storage soon afterward. I wrote their names on a legal pad and searched the registered addresses. At first, I thought the database had copied the same field 3 times. It hadn't. Every vendor pointed to one private mailbox in a strip mall south of Tacoma. The leaseholder was Brent Holloway, Donovan's former college roommate. Brent Holloway had shared an apartment with Donovan after college. He had never worked in refrigeration, industrial maintenance, or food distribution. By noon, I had checked every public record I could legally access. The 3 companies had no listed employees, contractor licenses, commercial vehicles, or industrial insurance. One claimed to repair ammonia systems but had no documented technicians or coverage. A mailbox and an old friendship looked suspicious, not conclusive. That afternoon, Luis called from an unfamiliar number. You still want to know about those maintenance bills? I want to know what actually happened. South loading gate after second shift. He met me beside a compressor housing with a flashlight and a folded work order. Accounting says this unit was replaced 8 months ago. The service tag showed the original serial number and the same dent near the lower panel. What was replaced? Nothing. My crew rebuilt a valve assembly. He handed me the work order. 6 employees had logged the labor, and the parts came from company inventory. Yet one of Brent's companies had billed more than $80,000 for a complete replacement. Luis showed me 2 more jobs with the same pattern. Employees did the work. Outside vendors collected the money. Why didn't you report it? To Donovan? He approves the invoices. To my mother. She signs whatever he puts in front of her. I photographed the serial numbers and his copies with permission. Then Luis stopped me. 6 years ago, we lost our bonuses after you left. People blamed you. I know. Were they wrong? I found payments that didn't match the work. Donovan told everyone I created the crisis, and I left before I could be forced to certify numbers I didn't trust. You could have told us. I should have. He kept listening. The next morning, Tasha slid her personal benefits statement across a cafe table near the port. A notice covered the employer-funded portion, administrative restriction pending secured obligation review. This is all I have besides my house. My daughter starts college next year. With her written authorization, I contacted the plan administrator about her account only. He confirmed that her personal contributions remained intact, but the restricted employer-funded amount was connected to a company financing obligation. So he didn't take it? I don't know that yet. I only know it may be tied to debt. That frightened her more. I called Elliot Shaw, a credit union executive who had helped explain public lending records on a municipal case. Without using private information, he found a filing showing a broad lien over Carter Cold Storage's equipment, receivables, inventory, and benefit-related reserves. That language is unusual. Not necessarily illegal, but we need to know what was pledged. It referenced an Idaho subsidiary. State records revealed Donovan's Boise expansion, a leased warehouse, new trucks, construction debt, amended liens, delinquent taxes, and a contractor lawsuit. The losses reached millions. None of it had appeared in the simplified shareholder summaries Marilyn sent me. At the next employee meeting, Donovan promised the buyer would eliminate debt, expand into 3 states, and protect every job. Supervisors circulated support statements while managers watched. Afterward, I found Seth changing delivery projections. The totals include loads that haven't happened, I said. Dad told me to include contracts expected after the deal. Signed contracts? He looked away. Projected accounts. He seemed to believe it was normal salesmanship, so I stopped there. Marilyn asked me to her house that evening. A family photograph stood on the sideboard. Before Donovan entered, she quietly laid it face down. He pays my mortgage now, she said. And my supplemental insurance. Her loyalty was not only love. He controlled the bills she feared. When Donovan joined us, I asked how much Idaho had lost. Enough that standing still will kill this company. And the maintenance vendors? He leaned back. You think rules save businesses? They don't. Revenue does. Financing does. This sale does. Did you pledge employee-related reserves? His expression changed before his voice did. If you expose half a transaction without understanding the rest, the lender could call the debt. The warehouse could close before the buyer reaches the table. Is that what you want? He was right about one danger. Exposing false invoices could trigger default and destroy the jobs I wanted to protect. Luis put it more bluntly. If this is only about beating your brother, leave us out of it. We can't retire on your satisfaction. So I stopped building an accusation and built an evidence map, vendor registrations beside insurance records. Invoice dates beside work orders. Equipment serial numbers beside replacement claims. Public liens beside Tasha's authorized notice. Idaho debts beside the reports given to shareholders. The pattern was clear, but the solution was not. Then I remembered my grandfather fighting a distributor that wanted the property but planned to cut most of the workforce. He had amended the bylaws afterward. I found my copy in old shareholder records. Near 2 a.m, I reached the clause. Any sale expected to eliminate more than 50 jobs required formal notice to qualified employees. Once notified, they had 10 business days to match the buyer's net offer through an approved cooperative or employee trust. Donovan could sell the company, but he could not legally sell the workers out without giving them the first chance to buy it. The clause gave us a door, not a rescue. I showed it to Luis and Tasha the next evening. Elliot joined by video because I wanted someone present who would explain what the language did not guarantee. He read the provision twice. It gives qualified employees the right to match the buyer's net offer, he said. It does not force anyone to finance them, and it does not prove this warehouse can survive on its own. What would we need? Luis asked. Evidence that Tacoma remains profitable after the Idaho losses are removed. Stable customers, usable equipment, realistic payroll, and enough employee participation to support a cooperative or trust. Donovan controlled the accounting system, but not every fact behind it. Luis reconstructed shipment volume from dock schedules, fuel receipts, refrigeration readings, and customer pickup records. Tasha calculated payroll obligations from pay stubs, tax reports, and benefit documents already within her duties. I compared the totals without entering the company network. For 3 nights, we worked after shifts ended. Our first estimate showed that Tacoma was strained, but not dying. Without the expansion debt, duplicate maintenance bills, and executive transfers, the warehouse appeared capable of supporting itself. Elliot remained careful. That is enough for me to keep listening, not enough for a financing commitment. Employees may have to delay profit sharing, and I need verified debt figures before approaching a credit committee. Before involving more workers, I gave Donovan one private chance to stop. I placed the bylaw clause and a short demand list on the conference table. Disclose the Idaho debt. Delay the sale. Remove Brent's companies and allow an independent restructuring review. Donovan glanced at the clause. You think warehouse workers are going to buy this company? They have the right to try. They have mortgages and children. You're asking them to gamble their paychecks because you found an old paragraph Granddad wrote 30 years ago. I'm asking you not to close a deal using facts they haven't seen. His chair scraped back. The buyer's deposit is already gone. What does that mean? I used it to satisfy an immediate lender demand. If closing is delayed, the lender can pursue the guarantees. Mine, the company's, and Mom's. You guaranteed her house? She signed the authorization. Did she understand it? He looked away. If I open every file you want, I lose the deal, the company, and maybe Mom's home. Then you can explain to 200 families how your perfect audit saved them. I left knowing he had spent money from a sale that had not closed. 2 days later, Donovan called an emergency employee meeting. A slide behind him contained figures from our preliminary model, shipment estimates, payroll ratios, and my note about separating Idaho liabilities. Only 4 people had seen that draft. My sister has been collecting confidential information and presenting herself to lenders without authority. He announced, I have not entered company systems or represented the company. Tasha Green provided payroll data to an outside party. She is suspended immediately. Tasha's face went still. Employees turned toward me. Their fear had found a new target. Outside, Tasha removed her badge and placed it on top of the payroll notebooks she had carried for years. You kept so much secret that he could make me look like the leak. I'm sorry. Did you send the draft to anyone besides Elliot? No, then somebody around you did. Luis waited until she left. You call it discipline, he said. But when nobody knows what you're doing, it looks like the same control your family has always used. He was right. I had hidden too much because I did not trust anyone else to manage the pressure. Marilyn called that night and begged me to stop. When I asked about her house, she began crying. Donovan said the bank could take it if the sale fails. Did you sign a guarantee? I signed what he said was necessary. My mother's fear had become another lock on the company. The sale was scheduled to close in 6 days. Donovan restricted the accounting wing, added security at the employee entrance, and warned that organizing against the transaction might violate company policy. Workers who had privately supported the purchase stopped answering calls, so I changed the plan. Near midnight, 12 employees met inside a loading bay because management monitored the break room. Cold air leaked through the dock seals while trucks idled outside. I placed our evidence map on a portable board, then erased my name from the center. Luis took operations. Tasha, still suspended, agreed to advise only on documents she personally owned or could legally discuss. Drivers handled customer continuity. A maintenance technician cataloged equipment. An employee-selected attorney would control formal requests. This cannot be my investigation with workers standing behind me, I said. It has to be your decision, built from facts you can verify. Elliot began outlining a possible cooperative, but repeated his condition: no verified debt figures, no financing commitment. I could not promise every job would survive. I could not promise the employee notice would even be accepted. The meeting ended after 2 in the morning. As I reached my car, Seth stepped from behind a trailer holding a bound presentation. My dad ordered me to distribute these to the buyer's team. This copy is mine. Inside was the version employees had never seen. One slide marked the Tacoma property for disposal. Another scheduled workforce consolidation immediately after closing. The final timeline gave the warehouse 90 days. Donovan had promised every employee their job was safe. The buyer's own presentation proved he already knew the building would close. The presentation Seth gave me did more than expose the planned shutdown. On page 47, beneath a table of projected liabilities, it referred to Schedule 8C. That schedule was missing. I sent the public financing filings and Seth's copy to Mara Chen, the woman who had trained me to examine procurement fraud without confusing suspicion for proof. Collateral packages use schedules to define what a lender can reach, she said. If 8C is gone, somebody remove the page explaining the benefit-related reserves. The employee's attorney sent a formal disclosure demand under the purchase right clause. Donovan's lawyers answered that no notice was required because the transaction was a restructuring, not a closure. The attorney attached the buyer's slide showing the Tacoma property marked for disposal and more than 50 jobs scheduled for elimination. Their second answer arrived the next afternoon. The clause applied. They released a limited package with a warning that disclosure could damage the sale. Elliot, Mara, the attorney, and I reviewed it in a borrowed conference room while trucks lined up outside a company Donovan called nearly worthless. Schedule 8C was there. The employees' personal contributions had not been emptied. Donovan had pledged a company reimbursement reserve and future employer contributions as additional collateral. If the sale closed, those obligations would be swept into the transaction. Challenging them afterward could take years. Tasha read the explanation twice, so my account wasn't robbed. Not the way we feared. But money the company owes you has been placed behind its debt. Elliot pointed to the closing date. It was moved forward. The original calendar gave us 6 days. The amended documents gave us 72 hours. I wrote the deadline on the dispatch board normally used for delivery windows. Beneath it, Luis listed everything the workers still had to finish. One document bothered me more than the rest. An emergency board consent authorized the collateral package. Marilyn's signature appeared at the bottom. I drove to her house with a copy. She was sitting at the kitchen table when I arrived. Did you approve this? She touched the signature without reading the page. He brought me something during the foreclosure scare. This document? No. Just the signature page. I waited. He said the lender needed authority to move money and that we could lose the house if I delayed. I knew it was financial. I didn't ask what would be attached. You chose not to know. Her eyes filled, but she did not deny it. I believed he would repair everything after the sale. My mother had been pressured. She had also supplied the signature that gave his pressure legal weight. The easy choice would have been to hide her role. Instead, I told her the employee trust needed the whole account. If I sign a statement, will you protect me? I won't humiliate you. I also won't erase what you did. The next morning, Marilyn signed a sworn statement describing the blank page, Donovan's warning about her house, and her decision not to ask further questions. Before we could file it, Donovan retaliated. He gathered the day shift beneath the same banner he had used to celebrate the partnership. Tasha Green removed confidential payroll information, he announced. Because that information was given to people interfering with the transaction, immediate layoffs may now be necessary. Tasha stood near the back without her badge. You suspended me before the employee group existed. Donovan ignored her and blamed me for endangering the sale. Then Seth stepped forward. You told me to remove the shutdown slide from the employee copy. Donovan's face hardened. This is not your meeting. You promised nobody would lose their job. The buyer's file says this warehouse closes in 90 days. The room erupted, but Seth kept going. I distributed the original because you ordered me to. I kept my copy. Aunt Renee didn't steal it. For the first time, Donovan could not dismiss the evidence as my interpretation. Tasha still did not trust me. I found her afterward beside the locked payroll office. I should have shared the risk before I used your numbers in the model. I said. I treated control like protection. It wasn't. She waited for an excuse. I gave her none. Finally, she said, I'll help the workers. Not you. That's how it should be. That evening, employees signed the formal purchase notice beside the humming freezer doors. Some signed quickly. Others held the pen for a long time, knowing ownership could mean delayed profit sharing, lower short-term pay, and responsibility for a damaged company. The notice preserved their right to compete. It did not finance the purchase. Elliot built a conditional package around Tacoma's equipment, cash flow, employee participation, and customer retention. The credit union would consider funding only if major customers confirmed they would remain after a worker transition. I contacted a hospital supplier, a seafood distributor, and a cooperative of independent grocery stores. I showed them the operational plan and asked whether they would consider staying if Luis's team kept deliveries running. All three provided non-binding continuity letters. It was enough for a conditional commitment, not enough for victory. The employee offer still appeared several $1 million below the private equity price. We had less than a day to prove the headline number was not the buyer's true net offer. I worked through existing liens, closure expenses, the deposit Donovan had spent, contracts that could terminate after relocation, and equipment already pledged elsewhere. Near dawn, I reached a line labeled Port Redevelopment Credit. The buyer had counted a multi-million-dollar tax credit as if it were cash already inside the company, but the credit required the Tacoma warehouse to remain operating. Their own plan closed it in 90 days. The moment the building shut down, the credit disappeared. Donovan's celebrated purchase price was materially inflated. By 9 that morning, Donovan had turned the warehouse conference area into a closing room. Managers, shareholders, lender representatives, and the private equity team filled the tables. Through the glass panels, employees watched from the loading floor. A celebration cake sat near the dock beneath the banner promising the company's next 40 years. Donovan opened with polished charts. He called Idaho a temporary strain, the shell vendors specialized contractors, and the employee trust a desperate effort led by a sister who had abandoned the business. The employee offer is several $1 million lower, he said. There is no reason to delay. I attended as a minority shareholder and the employee trust's representative. The bylaw requires comparison of net value, I said. Not the number printed on the first page. Then compare them. Luis went first. He placed maintenance logs beside invoices from Brent Holloway's 3 companies. Serial numbers showed that equipment supposedly replaced remained in service. Employee timesheets proved Carter crews performed the labor. And inventory records showed the company supplied the parts. One vendor charged more than $80,000 to replace a compressor still bolted to its original concrete pad. The buyer's operations director asked whether the vendors had been disclosed as related parties. They aren't related parties, Donovan said. They are controlled by your former college roommate, I answered. We are not claiming where every dollar went. We are showing an undisclosed relationship, unsupported invoices, and false work certifications. Tasha presented the retirement notices in Schedule 8C. Personal deposits had not been emptied, but company reimbursement reserves and future employer contributions had been pledged without employees being told. A lender representative asked why that language was missing from the summary package. Nobody answered. Seth connected his laptop to the projector. The shutdown presentation appeared on the wall where Donovan had announced the partnership. Seth identified the file and showed the pages removed from the employee copy. The 90-day closure timeline filled the screen. Donovan stared at him. You don't understand what you're doing. I understand you told them one thing and us another. Marilyn spoke next. Her voice shook, but she confirmed that she had signed a blank authorization page during the foreclosure scare. The completed board consent had been attached later without her reviewing the terms. Mom, tell them what happens to your house if this deal fails, Donovan said. She looked at him. I know what you told me. I also know I chose not to ask what I was signing. She did not pretend fear made her innocent. Then I presented the net value analysis. The headline price counted a port redevelopment credit that vanished if Tacoma closed. It counted contracts that could terminate after relocation, equipment already pledged to the lender, and a deposit Donovan had spent. It ignored closure costs and employee-related liabilities. After those adjustments, the employee trust's offer was not several $1 million behind, its net value was higher. It also preserved customer revenue supported by 3 continuity letters. Elliot placed the credit union's conditional commitment on the table. The room grew quiet enough to hear forklifts beyond the glass. Donovan stopped denying the Idaho losses. He explained them. The expansion opened late. A major customer withdrew. Construction costs rose, and the lender demanded more collateral. Donovan concealed the first loss because he believed one good quarter would repair it. Then he borrowed to cover the next quarter. The false vendor invoices moved money between obligations and kept the reports looking stable. Each decision existed to hide the one before it. I stayed and kept this company alive, he said. Then he faced the workers. Ask Renee what happened when she left. Vendors tightened terms. Bonuses disappeared. She resigned during a financial review and left everyone else to absorb it. Faces shifted toward me. He was using the truth, just not all of it. I did leave abruptly, I said. I refused to certify numbers I could not verify. but I also failed to explain the risk to the employees who would feel it first. I let Donovan's account become the only account because I thought walking away was enough. Luis watched without expression. It wasn't enough. That was my failure. It is not permission to fabricate work, hide collateral, or promise jobs you already agreed to eliminate. The employee trust still had to approve the purchase. Tasha led the workers onto the loading floor without either of us. "This vote belongs to employees," she said. "Not to Renee or Donovan." While we waited, the private equity representatives closed their laptops one by one. Their attorney said the undisclosed collateral, vendor conflicts, shutdown plan, and disputed valuation created liabilities outside the agreed transaction. They withdrew from the closing. The lender froze further disbursement and ordered an independent forensic review. Its counsel said suspected misrepresentations might be referred for civil or criminal investigation. Nobody was arrested, and no final finding was made that day. The workers returned with enough votes to continue the cooperative purchase. Marilyn and the minority shareholders convened under the emergency bylaws. Her shares still held the largest voting bloc. This time, she used them without asking Donovan what to do. By the required vote, he was removed from operational authority while the financing and investigation proceeded. Donovan stood beside the untouched cake as security collected his keys. I had imagined defeating him would feel louder. Instead, it felt like watching a room stop accepting his version of reality. Nobody celebrated. The buyer was gone, but the debt remained. The employees had committed themselves to a company that could still fail. Elliot asked me to stay behind. "The credit committee will not finalize financing without an independent temporary trustee," he said. "I'm not taking control of this company." "That isn't what they're asking." He slid the employee vote across the table. The people who had blamed me for leaving 6 years earlier had chosen me to hold the warehouse together until they could own it themselves. I accepted the trusteeship on 3 conditions. Every major financial decision required worker board approval. Monthly reports would be available to every employee. And my appointment would end after 1 year, whether the company was stable or not. The lender agreed. The employees agreed. Marilyn did not. For the first time, my mother had to watch a Carter family company move forward without her permission. The restructuring agreement removed her voting control. The employee trust offered to protect her home from Donovan's guarantees, but only if she surrendered her authority and repaid medical premiums and mortgage payments traced to improperly transferred company funds. She signed. A week later, she asked me to meet her at the house. "I chose the child who stayed," she said. "Because if Donovan was wrong, then I had been wrong for years. It was easier to believe you abandoned us." That doesn't explain signing blank pages. No. It explains why I wanted his promises to be true. She apologized, but an apology did not restore her shares or erase what employees had risked. I agreed to occasional dinners and limited contact outside company decisions. It was not forgiveness. It was a boundary. The lender's review moved slowly. Investigators traced the shell vendors, collateral statements, and private equity deposit Donovan had spent. His personal accounts were restricted while civil claims were evaluated. His guarantees were separated from operating debt, and possible fraud referrals remained open. He was not led away in handcuffs. There were lawyers, document requests, frozen transactions, and bills he could no longer hide inside the company. 2 weeks after his removal, Donovan returned for personal files under supervision. Seth was finishing a dispatch shift when his father found him. "You don't owe these people your future," Donovan said. "Come with me. We'll start over." Seth looked toward the dock, where drivers waited for revised routes. "I helped you distribute numbers that weren't real. You followed instructions. That doesn't make me qualified to inherit anything." He stayed. The employee board kept him as an entry-level dispatcher. He lost access to management meetings and had to apply for future promotions like everyone else. Donovan waited near my temporary office before leaving. "You took my company, my son, and my life." "I didn't take your son. You turned him against me." He read the documents. His face tightened. And the company? You were spending everyone else's future to protect your own. I stopped you. He expected anger. I had none left to give him. The cooperative financing closed 6 weeks later, but only after concessions nobody celebrated. Executive salaries were cut. Profit sharing was delayed 18 months. The failed Idaho property was sold at a loss. 3 customer renewal targets became loan conditions. We avoided mass layoffs, but not every position survived. 7 employees accepted voluntary retirement packages, and 6 vacant jobs were eliminated instead of refilled. The company was preserved, not rescued from reality. Luis joined the worker board and challenged nearly every proposal I brought forward. Tasha became benefits compliance manager and reviewed every retirement-related transaction before it reached the board. She trusted my work again, but never treated my judgment as unquestionable. That was healthier than loyalty. The first time I prepared a restructuring plan alone and presented it as nearly finished, Tasha closed the folder. We said collective review. I almost told her I worked faster by myself. Then I remembered how often Donovan had used speed and certainty to keep everyone else outside the room. I reopened the plan with the board. My instinct to withhold information came from fear that other people would complicate the solution. I had called it discipline. Sometimes it was simply control wearing better clothes. By the 3rd month, the locked executive parking spaces were removed. Employees replaced them with numbered cooperative spaces assigned by shift. I took my grandfather's portrait from the private boardroom and hung it near the public entrance. He had built the warehouse, but his name no longer gave our family the right to rule it. Our first quarterly report went on the employee notice wall. Revenue had stabilized. 2 customers renewed. The 3rd demanded lower rates. Equipment repairs were higher than projected, and the loan covenants left almost no room for another bad quarter. Nobody became wealthy. Nobody was guaranteed a job forever. The difference was that every employee could see the danger instead of being told everything was fine. At the end of 9 months, several workers asked me to remain as permanent chief executive. I declined. The company did not need another Carter deciding that only one person could hold it together. We created an open leadership search, published the qualifications, and barred any family member from unilateral authority. 1 year after Tasha's call, employees gathered in the loading area to elect their first permanent board chair. Marilyn watched from outside the glass. She had been invited as family, not as an owner. She did not ask to enter. Luis won the vote. When it was finished, I gave him the warehouse keys and signed the final trustee transfer. Then I walked through the same loading entrance where Donovan had mocked me for returning. Behind me, forklifts moved, dispatch radios crackled, and freezer doors opened for the morning shipments. The building continued without my brother controlling it. It continued without my mother owning it. And it continued without needing me to take their place.